If you could scream percussively, that would be
Pretty good.
It's like a scream clap, like a scrap.
Butterscotch.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 179 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm the avoider of moderation problems.
I'm Sam, and I'm recovering from a food coma.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is Govember Speedy Quicks 2018.
Speedy Quicks.
Yeah, so
That's good.
That's November 26th, if you couldn't reverse engineer that one. Before we get started, we have a warning. Anything can happen on this show. There's going to be profanity, and we're going to talk about adult things that kids probably don't care about or whatever. So this show should not be listened to by children. The end. All right, first, most important news. This is a prime number episode.
Ooh, we hit another one. Wait, what number is it?
179.
Okay.
So I don't know when the next one is.
I feel a little bit like... Did you look this up to verify that it's
I
prime?
did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because one of those that sounds a little fishy, like it could go either way.
It's so suspiciously prime.
Well, it's because it's got a 9 in there.
Yeah.
Which you're like, well, that's divisible by 3, but 17 isn't divisible by anything. We're at 170, and that's kind of like 17.
Yeah.
Right?
It's very confusing.
Yeah.
Prime numbers
I
are weird.
assume the next one is 183, but maybe it's not.
Are they that close together? I guess it's random, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's randomly distributed.
Some primes are far
primes.
apart, some primes are close together. You don't know. There's no way to know. So that's just, I think we should all acknowledge.
Congratulations. We made it to another prime.
Congratulations, everybody.
It's prime day.
We'd also like to thank our recurring supporters over at moneygrab.bscotch.net. People are dropping cash into our money pit.
dropping cash into our money.
Someday we will swim into it.
Yep.
But it is too shallow. Right now, we'll break our necks.
We're not doing anything with it.
No.
We're just piling it up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and there is those scenes with Scrooge McDuck diving. He's got his vault of coins. I feel like this
that he swims.
He
through,
swims in,
which sounds very painful.
Unless he's a duck, which means he's actually a liquid. You know?
That's true.
Because then he could swim through it just fine, even if it's solid.
Cats and ducks are liquid, as we know.
That is true.
So that's a thing. If you'd like to help support the podcast, head on over to moneygrab.bscotch.net, and we appreciate it. Let's get on some studio news. We just got back from break, Thanksgiving break. So we've discussed in the past how on the weekend you become weakened, and of course during the break you break.
You become broken.
You be very careful.
You get broken.
So how did you guys handle it? How was handling the lack of rigor?
So bad, real bad. I handled it badly.
Yeah?
Yeah. It was. I decided to try to actually take a break. So I was like, normally I just work through everything. And anytime there's time off for me, that's just like, cool, that's more time to get work done. Well, that's it, I guess. So it's more of time over there versus time off. And so this time I took the first couple of days. I was like, I'm just going to read. I'm going to play video games. I'm going to watch some shows, like catch up on various pop culture things. And the problem is that maybe it's my personality or whatever, but for example, I was like, I'm going to finish reading the Expanse series, or at least kind of like work on it. So there's 7 books currently. I was in the middle of book 5. I started reading it, and that was all I could do then.
You were just there now.
Until because I have no other obligations for a little while, and I have this project now that I'm working on. And so I essentially just read like 1,400 pages in 2 days.
That's how I normally do my sci-fi.
So I did that, and I was like, I enjoyed it, but I hate this because I'm trapped now, and I have to finish this thing, and I have there's nothing else to take me away from it, you know. So I did that. I played some games, which was good, but eventually I realized that like my taking a break ended up making me really stressed because there's all these things that I want to get done on Levelhead and stuff. And every day that I wasn't working on it just kind of like pissed me off.
Yeah, I feel you.
Because I was like, by the time I get to the end, I'm just imagining how much farther along I could have moved the game, and I didn't.
Yeah, so I took a legal pad with me, which is sort of my weapon of choice against breaks. And on the plane,
keep yourself from breaking.
Yeah, so on the plane over, I made a list of like Thanksgiving goals, and then like here's all the things I'm gonna do. Included on there was play this new Donkey Kong game or the Tropical Freeze.
I did play the Pokemon game as well.
Yeah, so play some of these games for research, But again, the framing is all about research. It's not like, have a great time. Like, no, it's just like play a game for research purposes. Hang out with family, do that, be really present for that. And then knock out a few of these drawings for my classwork, and then also try to do one of these drawings for one of the studio things for Levelhead. So that was like my last item where I was sort of trying to use that as a carrot for me, because if I burned through everything else and I had like 2 or 3 hours to spare over this 4-day thing, then I could put some time into that thing that I really wanted to do.
How'd that go?
It seemed to work pretty well, actually.
Nice.
I got to it on a Saturday afternoon. On the plane ride back yesterday is when I got to do it.
Oh.
So I just squeezed it in right in the last couple hours, thanks to having a surface.
Was it 3 or 4 hours in the plane?
Yeah,
during a tornado. So
yeah, there's
probably a little bumpy.
Very violent ride. Yeah, my wife was tripping as we were coming in because the plane was getting tossed about. It was not. There were tornado sirens going off in St. Louis as we were landing. As they were coming
yesterday.
In. Yes.
Yeah. Not in your area. It was
okay.
Our
area doesn't. West. Our area only gets wind. All other weather is gone.
It
before
just goes around.
Somehow.
Yeah. So we were in the basement because there was tornado sirens and a big ass storm kind of like hit our area and then went northeast toward the airport.
Okay.
So it went like just past.
Okay, because I think this like the city, because I'm pretty close to the center of the city. I think city is just kind of like they're like a wedge. Yeah, they kind of keep things out a little bit.
Yeah, just because there's all the cars.
It's just all that pollution,
heat bubbles.
It's that pollution and all the sound pollution. It's like all these vibrations shooting the air. Knocking
so
loud.
The weather the storm is like, I don't want to be.
No, so many people like. He doesn't want to make eye contact with anybody, because that's uncomfortable.
So I was like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
That's why they call it the calm before the storm, because storms only go where it's calm.
Exactly.
And so if it's a lot of loud noises.
Right. So the calm before the storm describes the path that storms take.
Yeah.
Not sort of your experience.
If it gets calm, it doesn't
That's how they get
the
you.
storm doesn't make it calm.
It's like a low pressure system, so it allows the storm to move in.
Right.
Yeah. And when they talk about a low pressure system, they're talking about just
how loud it is.
How many people are
pressure of people's expectations.
Right. How stressed are people?
Yeah.
This is why, for example, like you never see tornadoes in the Midwest. Like in rural areas.
And have you ever heard of a tornado in Silicon Valley?
Yeah, exactly.
Never.
Yeah. So
they're freaking out all the time.
All right. So this is that. Yeah.
The problem is you can get earthquakes once you get too many people, though, because all that stomping around.
Well, it's a different pressure problem.
Pressure problem. Yeah. Because now it's just too much weight.
Yeah. Now it's a high pressure problem.
Yeah.
So you got earthquakes if you have high pressure.
Yeah. This is all true. So
yeah, definitely.
Okay. Adam, did you get some shit done? What was your break? Did you break?
I also broke mostly.
Nice.
I had a list of it's family time, so I try to be present, but I also made sure that I put in some good time just reading. I picked up Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance because
so good.
I've heard so much about that book my entire life, and somehow I've never read it. So I was like, this is probably time for me.
Did you finish it?
Yes. I'm like 3/4 of the way through. So it's
oh my god, yeah, we got
it's good. It's fun. It's
a little wild.
Yeah, it's the way that started off. I was just kind of bored for a while because I was like, this is kind of interesting, but also not that much, But then things started to kind of get a little weirder.
Yep.
And so then it started to get a little more interesting. This has been fun, but I also picked up a new sci-fi series called, the first book's called Ancillary Justice. And it was fucking rad.
Is that justice? It's justice like next to
it's
regular justice?
Ancillary is the name for
or is
it.
that auxiliary?
That's auxiliary.
Ancillary?
It's a similar idea, but the thing is the series is really good. So I picked, basically like Seth, I picked it up, couldn't put it down, and that was just what I did. Fortunately, I'm renting them from the library on my Kindle.
Nice.
And so
save that money.
Then there's a bonus there too, which is that the next one in the series is already out for somebody else, and so I couldn't actually binge on it. So I realized this is sort of an additional pro feature of using a library instead of buying books, is that you can't always have them when you want. And therefore, you can't binge things, which I sort of am prone to do.
Wait, how does that library work? What is that?
It's just like if you get a St. Louis
library.
If you get a St. Louis,
I understand the sort of the physical.
If you get a St. Louis library card, then you can basically sign up on this app called Libby.
You can just get digital books from it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I assume this is true in most other cities.
So they have like a queue or something.
Yeah, they treat them like physical.
They treat them like a physical copy. So if somebody else has it, but like it's actually you just go to the app and you choose what you want. You can put a hold on it, so you're next in the line, and then once it's up, it just
This was
becomes
this would be
available.
a great place for blockchain technology.
This would.
I'm just sensing a market opportunity here.
Yeah. This is a perfect example of a problem that's already solved that could then also be solved with blockchain technology that now people will get excited about.
Mhm.
It's already solved in the real world because books exist.
Yeah.
So
And it's already solved in the digital world because databases exist.
yeah,
Solve it again.
solve it again more expensively.
Raise some VC capital.
Yeah. So I picked up this series, and the series is very confusing because the main character, I'm trying to think of this to make sure this is not a spoiler. No, because you figured it out pretty quickly. So the main character is actually like an AI distributed across multiple like bodies,
cool.
and it is like part of a ship and stuff. And so there's this very
Very
confusing,
relatable protagonist.
but then it is actually. So then it's this very confusing thing though, because it's then you're seeing through the eyes of all these different sort of ancillaries, or is where that comes from. All these different sort of things that are witnessing an event happen at the same time, right? So there's a lot of this sort of frame shifting that happens throughout the book that makes it a little bit hard to hold on to, but it's super good.
You know, it's interesting from a human standpoint, though, because there's also this general theory about how your brain works, which is that you are a bunch of competing intelligences, essentially. Yeah. And you just sort of sit on top of it a little bit, like the thing you think of as you. So maybe it is a very relatable protagonist in the sense that you are also just a shitload of various AIs who want various, or I guess
This is the
shards of AI.
This is like the elephant rider metaphor,
It is. Yeah.
right? Where like what you think of as yourself is actually like a tiny little person sitting on top of an elephant that's kind of going wherever the fuck it wants.
Yeah, and you're just narrating what
you can
happens.
lean it.
Yeah. And the best you can do is when the elephant goes somewhere, you can be like, I meant for that to happen.
Yeah, that's about right.
You can lean it, maybe get it like 3 degrees to the right, but it's going to go where the
Just
fuck
gonna
it
do what it
wants.
wants. But then there was one important thing I did though,
What was that?
which is I ordered a bidet,
You got a
Whoa.
bidet? Whoa!
and I can't remember.
You got to have a clean butt.
Gotta have that clean butt. So
I'm curious. I'm going to hear about this.
Well, the thing is, like, is it came up in conversation for some reason. I can't
Did
remember.
it spurt up in conversation?
it did somehow, but I don't remember.
Shot it into the conversation.
I don't remember how we got on that topic, but we were talking about it, and all of a sudden I was like,
You're like, I'm tired of
I was
having
like,
a
what?
dirty ass.
"Why don't I have a bidet? Like, why have I never tried this?" And so I googled around
Whoa.
a bit, and there's a company that's like, it's one of those sort of modern, like MeUndies style
Yep.
companies where they
Me bidet.
they don't take themselves that serious. It's called Hello Tushy.
Mm.
But also, as I was Googling it, I was like, this is a really dangerous search that I'm doing right here. But they got a hilarious website that's just these people like having a blast, like sitting on the toilet.
Having a blast.
Having a blast. And it's puns.
That should be their trademark.
Have a blast.
Have a blast.
And it's like puns everywhere. And they're not shy at all about just talking about any of this stuff. So like there's some of the
gotta
models,
own it, right?
Yeah,
I
some of
mean,
the models
come
on the images are wearing a shirt that just says "Ask me about my butthole." So I was looking at the site and I was like, I like these people. This is good.
Do you get a free tea with the bidet?
I don't know. I hope so.
That would be.
I could wear that one to work.
That'd be so bold.
So it hasn't arrived yet, but I'm gonna try that thing out once it does arrive. Then I'll report.
So I
back.
assume you got to like rig it into your plumbing and
Yeah, supposedly they've made it all very simple. That's a lot of their big.
But the new
it's
ones, you
another
just like
pitch.
snake it into the water tank, I think. Is how
Oh,
Or
it's
something
like
like
Or you hook it up to because if you have it next to, so if there's a cold water only one, which I was like, fuck no, that's not what I want in my life.
yeah,
But that
well,
one,
I mean, that might be refreshing.
it would be very refreshing. But that one you can just plug right into the toilet's water supply.
Yeah.
And then there's
Oh.
also there's a temperature adjustable one, which if you have a toilet next to a sink, then you can use the sink's water supply.
Okay.
So that's what I'm going to be trying out.
Wow.
So we'll see how
we
that
need
goes.
Well, let us know how it goes and then invite us over for dinner.
have a bidet.
We'll put it through its paces.
I don't know about that. I'm not sure about this. It sounds like a private.
He's using someone else's bidet? Is that like a...
See, that's the thing is I don't know
Across the
anything
boundary?
about how to think about any of it. So I figure I'll get one.
cultural experience?
To get some more thoughts on the matter
Right.
after having
Let's
this.
figure
We
it
need
out.
to hear back. We need
Yeah.
to hear back about this. Also, Sam played Donkey Kong.
Yes.
Let's talk about Donkey.
Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze.
Tropica House.
So Tropical Freeze, I think it actually came out in the Wii U. So it's old.
This is a Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, by the way, in case you could not parse that.
Yeah, because I was looking up videos for it, and the videos were from like 2015.
What?
And I thought, what? But I never heard about it because it's on the Wii U. At least I think
Oh.
maybe that's not true, but I don't know how they had videos for it out 3 years ago. Otherwise,
Maybe they were working on it.
I have no idea. But it's on the Switch, and that's where I came across it because I'd heard on GMTK, Game Maker's Toolkit, which is Mark Brown's YouTube channel. He was talking about, I believe it was him, was talking about the game, just how good it is, and how one of the things about it was the set design. And so, in other words, levels in both level head, if you look at the background, like it's pretty much the same. Like we don't have a lot of stuff going on back there. Aside
It's
from
just
like
back there.
it's just back there because we don't really care about it.
That's called the background.
But in the case of Donkey Kong, they like every single level you're in is actually completely. They might be themed sort of like on an island itself. So, for example, one of them is the savannah. So there's a lot of those really bulbous trees called
Bulb trees.
You know what I'm talking about?
I think it's a pineapple.
You guys are baobabs.
Are you just making it
BAOBABS?
Sure,
A baobab tree. Okay.
Baobab? Yeah, why not?
I can't remember.
That's what
Okay.
it is.
It's something like that. Whatever.
I
So
definitely like that name.
these ones with these big fat trunks, right? So the whole area.
Backstreet Boys. I think that's what
You
that
stop
is.
it. So the whole zone is in this sort of savanna grassland thing, and then they'll come up with new mechanics like, oh, there's some fire in this place. You need to put out with water balloons, whatever. But the interesting thing about it is each one of the individual levels has its like a very distinct and very own set design going on as far as what the background's doing. So the background might be like dark and on fire, and there's like a bunch of cliffs and stuff, and then you're blasting around in these Donkey Kong barrels, but you blast sometimes backward. So you'll blast through Z space, right? As opposed to just the side scrolling.
So toward the background.
Toward the background or toward the foreground, and then they'll sort of move the camera around constantly. So it's just very visually spectacular, just sort of across the board, and really not something I'd seen done in a 2D platformer.
Except for Wario for the virtual board.
Yeah, it's been years.
Yeah.
It's been years.
There's some stellar backgrounds.
Yeah.
But that was really cool to see. But the one thing that kept getting hung, because one of the things I heard about was, it's really hard. And so when we think about and talk about hardness in games, there's two kinds. There's the kind that is sort of very purposeful on the point of the designers, where like they made it very hard in a particular area.
They've given you the tools to do a thing, but the thing itself
Requires
is pretty hard.
expertise.
And then there's the other one, which is when the tool itself kind of sucks, which makes it hard.
like QWOP.
And unfortunately,
If it's like, hey, hang this thing, but you have to use a manual screwdriver to put these drywall anchors in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the case of Donkey Kong, I think, unfortunately, the latter is the case because the horizontal movement of the characters is so low that even jumping across like a very small gap, you will oftentimes just die. Where if you just mess it up like the tiniest bit, then you die. And on top of that, there's only a few different moves that the character does, and one of them involves sort of rolling forward. And this is sort of your sort of sprint mechanic. You also can use it to kill enemies, that sort of thing. But the problem is the difference in move speed between your normal lateral movement and then between the rolling move. I think it must be like 5 to 8 times faster. And it also goes for a certain duration before it stops.
And you can't cancel it.
You can't cancel it.
So if
Can
you
you jump while it's happening?
You can.
Okay.
But of course, you're moving at now light speed compared to where you were. Yeah. And so, if you accidentally tap that button, you'll also just go flying off a ledge.
So you're either falling down through trivial gaps or you're overshooting like a fucking missile.
Yes. And so even after I played 4 zones in it, beat a couple of the bosses, and like very fun, very cool. Again, the set design, the characters, everything the presentation was just sort of like unbelievable. But yeah, the fact that I was just routinely dying because sort of the character has this really slow turnaround, or they would sort of horizontally get, slowed down and stuck somewhere. It was so frustrating that after I played it for about 2 or 3 hours, I think. And then I was like, well, I'm good. I'm done. There wasn't, because it didn't always feel like it was my skill that was at work. It felt
or
more
maybe you don't feel like you feel like maybe you don't get to experience growth and mastery because the tool itself is just too
a little wonky.
Yeah.
So it was a really good experience overall. I got a bunch of ideas that we'll be discussing basically today for pulling into level head, but it's an impressive piece of set design, I think, more so than anything else. It's very spectacular.
Well, it's still worth something.
It's worth $60, so I don't know if it's worth that, to be honest.
Maybe wait for a sale.
Yeah, wait for a sale.
Are there sales on first-party games? Does that ever even
idea.
happen? I don't know.
I think so. Yeah, Jen and I were looking through co-op games yesterday on Switch, and so we saw there was definitely some stuff on sale.
Okay.
Although actually maybe it wasn't because it was like because Nintendo's got some weird. It was mostly indies, but
I've never heard of like Zelda going on sale.
But I know like that Mario Rabbids game was, but that's also an Ubisoft game, which is very confusing. So
yeah, I don't think it's first party.
Yeah, so maybe there weren't any first parties.
Oh,
I'm not sure.
So I guess either drop the 60 or just watch some YouTube videos.
Just watch the videos. You can watch some of the boss fights and stuff.
I will say this is going to sound like horn tooting, but whatever.
Toot that horn.
After, like, we spent so much time trying to get the movement in Level Head to be just really fluid and responsive and precise. And it has absolutely ruined other platformers for me.
Yeah, I feel that for you.
We've gotten, and it's probably just a matter of personal preference. You know, we're like, we've gotten Level Head to be where we like it, which is like just how fast the character responds to things, how easy it is to navigate through the world and stuff. So that when you get killed, you can very easily like point right back at yourself and be like, that was me. I fucked that up.
It's always definitely your fault.
Yeah.
Or if you have friends, it might be someone else's fault.
Yeah,
for throwing you into a pit of spikes.
Yeah. But it's always the case that like whatever it is that you want to do, it's very easy to sort of impose your will upon the character in Level Head. And you don't feel like you have to take a full minute to like slow down and turn around and go to somewhere else. So speaking of Level Head, let's talk about it. How's it going? Where's it at? We said that we have a potentially big announcement, which we do, but we're not going to drop it.
We got a few things to figure out.
Yeah, we got some things to figure out. But I do want to talk about discoverability.
Yes. Well, the play problem, actually.
The play problem.
So we, again, in doing research for Level Head, we looked at a bunch of reviews and also actually YouTube videos from people who played the shit out of the game. Because the question was not necessarily what's the first blush, experience people have with a game like this, but what is the problems that people who have really turned it into a hobby come across, and what do they see that is like the bigger issues in the game? So one of the things that came out was this idea of the play problem, which is that when it comes to surfacing content, there's an issue where if you as a player spend maybe like an hour, 2 hours, even maybe 5 hours building a level, and then you ship it, is anybody actually going to play it? Just because of how the system works?
No.
Yeah, the answer is usually no. And so this is something we've been thinking about a lot. We saw this video, which we would just really sort of try to circle back around to try to figure out how exactly to solve this problem in a way so that basically if you make a level, then there's some way for you to know that someone will play it, that it has at least that level of discoverability where it's a few people play.
Or there's something you can do
yes.
to make it so that other people are more likely to play it.
So let's talk about what we did.
Okay, so our solution, well, there's also an extra problem, which is when a level first gets published, there's no information about how good it is. Mm-hmm. There's no information about, is it engaging? How hard is it?
Because it's got 0 plays.
Nobody's played it, so there's nothing, right? Mm-hmm. And so really we figured like it's a 2-part problem. One is if you're building your discoverability around those things, where if somebody's like, I want to play a hard level, well, your level's not going to show up if you just published it because nobody knows how hard it is, mm-hmm. right? So there's that. And then there's just the problem of like, once you publish a thing, how do you get it to the top of any kind of a list if all the lists are based on how many plays it's had, right? And so we landed on this thing where we're calling it the QA basement, mm-hmm. which is basically the idea that when you publish your level, it doesn't immediately go into the like big list of levels that everybody's playing. Instead, it goes into the QA area, which is
quality
game
assurance.
Dev
Mm-hmm.
for quality assurance, or software development for quality assurance. So essentially, like you're packaging up your level, you're handing it off to the QA people, and that puts your level into a special list, which is the list of levels that we don't quite know anything about yet. Like basically, it's like the fresh new levels. And so when it's there, you can play other levels that are also going through QA to boost your level on the chart. Mm-hmm. So we actually borrowed this, or stole. We could just say stole. We stole mm-hmm. this from Ludum Dare, which Ludum Dare is a game making competition where nowadays like 900 games come out of it, and the goal is to get your game rated by other people, mm-hmm. right?
So it's the same problem actually as building levels.
Right. It's the same problem because it takes effort to download, play, and then rate a game. And people generally are more in it for themselves. Mm-hmm. Like they'll publish their own game and they want their game to get ratings, right? And so their mechanism is the same, which is the levels that you can, or the games that you can play are sorted by how many games the creator has rated.
Yes.
So if I rate 20 other games, then I get 20 points for my game, and then that bumps it up the list, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the approach that we're taking for that, which is you play other people's levels, and then your level goes up and up and up the QA list. And once it's gotten enough plays in there, then it goes into the main population, because now we know some stuff about it and we can actually sort it. So we know like how hard it is and all that kind of stuff. So that's one aspect of it. And the other question is, well, how do we know if it's any good?
Yeah. This is the weird one, I think, because I saw Adam and Seth sort of
There
was like a 2-hour
we wrestled with this because the original approach was like, well, we'll use a rating system, and you see this in a lot of games, and a lot
thumbs
of
up,
games,
thumbs down.
Yeah, like it's either a thumbs up, thumbs down. Maybe they'll ask you to rate different aspects of it. So they'll be like, how hard was it? Give me some stars. Was it well designed? Like whatever. But these things are all completely subjective and arbitrary.
Also, you can have a level that's very poorly designed, but is also very fun. Not because
just by accident.
It's not just by accident. So.
And the biggest thing we're running into is we were talking about how hard levels are going to be rated. The ratings are going to mean something different for hard levels, because people will be frustrated when they play hard levels.
But they also might love it.
But they also might love it. And so, but more people don't love the frustration of a hard level. And so that would mean that hard levels will actually just have their sort of grading curve skewed towards worse grades, right?
Right.
And so a lot of what we were talking about that kind of kept us going round and round in circles was basically how do we solve the rating problem, given that not only does rating mean something different to different people, but also it means something different depending on the level.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And kind of coming back to our conversation from last week's episode is that players often demand things from the game that are adverse to what they really want, right? So like if a player, let's say they play through a level 200 times and they finally beat it because it's really fucking hard, right? And then they give it a thumbs down and they're like, I hate this, right? But if they really hated it, why did they stick around?
Yeah, well, it's just like when you see on Steam, you see some user review where they got like 10,000 hours put into a game with a thumbs down. It's like,
yeah, I mean,
maybe that doesn't make sense,
right? And like, what are they actually reviewing there? What they're reviewing is maybe they're reviewing like their opinion about the developer at that point.
Yeah,
right?
or a recent update or something.
Yeah, just a very specific, or usually if they're thousands of hours in, they're reviewing a very specific aspect of the game that only really becomes an issue once you are 1,000 hours in or whatever.
Which most people will never experience it.
Right. And so if you're looking at those ratings for a decision on should I play this level or should I buy this game or whatever, it's rarely useful.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because there's kind of a difference between when you finish a level and you're remembering the experience of it versus just the experience of it, right?
Yeah.
And this is actually really interesting. So this is a problem that was brought up in psychology a lot actually now recently, especially with behavioral economics, is the fact that you as a person have actually two different selves that are often in competition with one another, which I just realized is kind of a similar situation. So one is your experiencing self, which is your moment-to-moment person, like you just being here doing this thing or maybe going through an operation or playing a level. And then you have your remembered self, who actually is a different person and optimizes for different things than your experiential self.
Right.
And so a lot of the problems that you come into with a review system is exactly this, which is, okay, so you might have had like you might have spent 200 hours like playing through some series of levels or playing some game, but you're remembering maybe just some of the parts that you found kind of annoying about it.
Yeah, well, it's easy to remember the stuff that was the most frustrating.
Right. But so the weird thing is that other players are going to be playing it as their experiencing selves, which means that if you experienced it for 200 hours and kept going,
they're not experiencing your memories.
Exactly.
They're experiencing their experience.
We probably don't care about what your thoughts are on it after the fact. We care about what you were doing.
It's even like we've talked about like how WoW, for example, changed over time, and it's like what I remember about the game no longer applies at all. Because it's changed so much over 14 years.
So if you played the game back in 2004 and then you went around today telling people,
oh, you got to play this game.
Or don't play this game, either way, right? You'd be talking about something else entirely.
Yeah. And so that's a whole other thing. And then there's things like EVE Online, which is a game that I love, but I would never recommend anybody to play. Just because I think it's for a very niche kind of a player, and so it's just not something that I would like push somebody into. It's something that they would need to want on their own. So if Steam is like, would you recommend this game to other people? And I'm like, well, no. I mean, I wouldn't, and I don't. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad game.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, you'd recommend it to certain other people.
I would recommend it to people who are interested in it. But for most people, no, I wouldn't. And so the problems with rating systems are many. And we've also talked about in level head, when would you ask somebody to rate a level?
Yeah, because what if they want to leave it?
Yeah, what if they die 5 times and then they quit? Do we ask them to rate it then?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's when they're most frustrated, probably.
That's when they're the most pissed off. What if we say you can only rate it when you beat it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that means really hard levels will never get rated, hardly ever.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll only get rated by the people who found it enjoyable enough to stick around.
Right. So now it's a really biased measurement.
And what if we said, okay, you can just rate it whenever you want on the pause menu? Well, guess what menu you use to quit the level? Well, it's the pause menu.
Mm-hmm.
What if we just randomly ask you to rate it? Like at some point. Well, what if we missed it? Like what if you quit before we asked you?
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these scenarios.
Well, and at the end of all of this, we have to have a statistically valid sample of ratings so that when we attach the rating to that level, we can feel comfortable that that actually means something, right? That it means something relative to other values of that same rating system.
And so we kind of realized, like, you know what? We don't care what people think. Because they're usually wrong. And you can always bias their answers just based on how you ask, right?
Yes, that's actually the problem. Is there's no way to ask for a review in a way that ask does not somehow become part of the review, right?
Yes. And like this, there is an entire profession of like people who are experts at composing forms and questions in certain ways to extract very specific desired answers, right? Like this is a known thing that you can easily bias answers just by
basically
asking.
Any political survey you ever take
is wrong.
Is designed to get specific answers out of you.
Yeah. Which is why. Well, I think you should just never take surveys, just full stop. You know. So our solution was basically say, okay, we're not going to ask people anything. Instead, we're just going to look at them.
Yep.
And this is actually our approach when we talk about a lot of QA stuff, which is like, if you really want to know what somebody thinks about your game, just watch them play it. Don't ask them what they think about it. And you'll get a lot of answers. So we have a handful of metrics that get attached to every level. And we know things like how many people have played it, like how many how many deaths have there been on that level, how many victories have there been,
how much playtime has gone into it.
Playtime has gone into it. And so we can use some of these really simple statistics to reverse engineer answer to some simple questions, which is like how many times do people tend to die, like on average per player on this level, which is actually kind of a metric of like, what's the probability that somebody finds their death to be something that was sort of in their control versus something that was frustratingly annoying that they couldn't deal with, right? Because what we can assume is like people quit when they get killed due to things that they think are unfair, right?
Or if they just don't like the experience.
Right? And so we kind of like compile all these different statistics together in various ways to come up with what we're just calling like a replay value metric, which is just to answer the question, how much does the typical player who comes across this level come back to this level? How engaged are they with the level? Do they tend to stick around and play it a bunch? Do they revisit it? Do they spend a lot of time in it? Do they play do they beat it a bunch of times repeatedly to try to find all the different secrets and things like that? And also because of our high score system, people will revisit the same levels to compete with their friends, right? But they won't revisit levels that they hate.
Yep.
So we can kind of compile all these together to come up with sort of a replay value metric. And we say, you know what, that's going to be our metric.
It's sort of our page rank equivalent, basically.
Yeah. That's going to be our metric. And so what that's going to do is that's going to yes, that is going to bias certain things. No matter what we do,
definitely.
No matter what we do, it's going to bias certain things. That's what sorting literally is. It's biasing things.
Yep.
And so we just had to ask the question of not like what is the best level, because that's arbitrary. Instead, we should say like what levels do we want to show people? Like what are the characteristics of levels that we want to sort to the top? And we just said, well, those are levels that people seem to enjoy spending a lot of time in and keep coming back to.
Even if they kind of hate it at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Which is how you feel about hard levels.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, is you like it and you hate it.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we landed. So we're removing this rating concept. We're using statistics to try to figure out what levels are engaging.
Yep.
And then we have a lot of buckets that you can filter by. So we have, you can filter by difficulty, you can filter by tags, by game mode, by number of players, by all these things. And then you can also check by time. So you can be like, show me the most engaging levels from the past day or the past week or whatever.
Yeah, we've also teased this idea of, or just internally talked a little bit about the idea of providing another time-based sort of breakup point, which is something along the lines of like a season, right? So if you have a season, which is a quarter or even shorter, and then if you're able to then basically any level that gets made is able to be slotted into multiple of these buckets, then you have more and more opportunity for it being able to surface, towards the top somewhere.
Yep.
All the stuff.
Yeah. And so when people are looking for specific niche things, then if you make an engaging level that meets those criteria, then it'll float to the top. So we combine this along with our QA basement concept. Then if you make a level, it's going to get played. As long as you put in the time to QA test other people's levels, right? So your level will get played. It'll sort to the top of QA. And then once it reaches a certain threshold, it'll be bumped out of QA into the main populace. And at that point, you sort of based on how people responded to your level when they played it while it was in QA, then now it's got kind of a preliminary sort of engagement ranking
and difficulty estimate.
And then from there, that will kind of settle, right? So if your level turned out to be super hard, then it goes into the super hard bucket, and then people will be able to see it in there, and then it'll kind of float up and down in the ranking. So that's kind of our solution. We realize not every level can get 1 million plays. It's just not math doesn't work that way. So the best we can do is we can guarantee that you have a mechanism to get some plays on your level. Yes. But then after that, it's kind of
actually after that, it depends on how good your level
was. Depends on how engaging your level
it was, right?
Yeah. So that's where we're at with that. Well, I think we're pretty pleased with it. We still need to kind of see how it.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident about it. We'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, I think the balance point is going to be because to make this all work, we have to make sure we control carefully how many new games go into the queue. Because if there's an enormous number of games in there that everybody's trying to balance and play, then that doesn't work super well. But it can actually probably handle a pretty good number of levels.
Well, and on the plus side,
so throttling incoming levels and then also tweaking that algorithm.
Even if it's the case that for every level every time you turn in a level, if you go and you play 5 or 6 levels to try to get yours bumped up, then that's a 1 to 6 sort of difference, right? So
well, and not only that, but people who play a lot of levels, of course, theirs will go way to the top of the list of the QA list. But those levels will get played a lot faster and a lot more, and then they'll be bumped out of QA.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
they don't actually soak up.
Right. So they go to the top of the list, but then they're gone because they've left QA now because they've gotten the plays they needed. So it's a self-balancing system that actually gives you, the creator, some tools to make sure that other people get to see it.
Without having to have a Twitter following or be a successful YouTuber already.
Yeah. And the fact is your level can sit in QA for however long. So if you're like, oh yeah, people still aren't playing it, play a few more levels today, play a few levels tomorrow, and you'll just keep accruing points on your level. And over time, it'll end up at the top, right? So you've got the tools.
Yeah, I think that was the big thing is there's no sense of player agency when it came to getting your level played in any of these.
It's much like
games.
Publishing a game.
Yeah, it is. Right. Yeah, can you imagine that if you could boost your game up the charts by playing other people's games?
Yeah, that would be something.
God.
I would hate that actually. Because I have to play a lot of games. Yep. There's 1,000 a day. All right, let's quickly talk about some industry news before we get on to questions. So essentially, I just want to talk about what's happening in terms of there's a lot of stuff coming out around this time because it's nearing the holidays. And some things haven't gone as planned.
Fallout 76, namely, which
Fallout
I think
76
we called as being a bad idea a little while ago.
Yeah. Fallout 76 sales are about 20% of Fallout 4's sales.
Well, Fallout 4 did sell a lot of copies. So that isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just
the assumption
it's bad for a publicly traded company.
Yeah, the assumption in a franchise is that your sequels tend to outperform the prequels.
Yeah.
So this is a pretty big hit. Hitman 2, same deal. It did a 10% of the sales of the previous Hitman game, which is
pretty bad.
That's pretty bad. And then also Activision has been struggling with Destiny 2, which this one I thought was interesting because they simultaneously said it's doing great and it's making a ton of money. but also sales figures are incredibly disappointing.
I think this is that contradiction of being a publicly traded company, right?
It's not about how well you succeeded. It's about compared to
some expectation or quarter over quarter growth or whatever.
And so Destiny 2 has been having the difficulty where they launched around the same time as like that whole EA Battlefront fiasco with Star Wars, all the loot boxes, and Destiny 2 essentially had a similar concept where they took a lot of the interesting progression systems of the first game and just were like, fuck that, and they turned it into a slot machine.
Well, the bigger problem was that players found that they had put we talked about this last week, I think, but put some of these live algorithms in there that were tweaking drop rates and stuff for people who actually spent money.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. On that, this is slightly an aside, but I think it's exactly relevant, which is I just saw that there was a crackdown on one of the airlines because they were intentionally splitting up families. They had an algorithm that was basically intentionally splitting up families to basically form a mechanism by which people would have to pay to like change their seating.
Oh god!
Whoa! And it was also funny because it's like this is the same thing that we've been talking about with loot boxes, but also my wife and I were talking about this we were completely surprised because we almost always fly Southwest Airlines, right? So on Southwest, you don't have an assigned seat.
Sit wherever you want.
You just sit wherever, but you have to get in a certain order in line to get on the plane, right? And so on this whole trip, we ended up like being way further forward than we normally ever get. And that's and my wife will just be there like the moment the clock flips over for our check-in time, she hits the button, right? And somehow remarkably, until this trip, like we're always end up like way, way back in the line. And so basically for me, like I had a few assumptions going at that time, which is basically just that there actually wasn't really a correlation between those things, or that people, of course, can pay to like move themselves up or whatever. But the one I hadn't thought about until I sort of put all this stuff into the same bucket was that they want to sell you this early bird thing that moves you up the line, right? And you can buy it after you check in.
Yeah, my assumption is that because they know that people who check in like immediately want to be earlier in line.
They're actually they're almost definitely, and of course, who knows what they're really doing.
Buy an early bird.
I have never.
They're probably They're probably definitely.
Oh yeah,
they've got to be. The people who like
falsely
come in the first
your spot in line.
They have to be doing that.
Oh yeah, no, it's not. I don't think anywhere in their terms does it say like this is actually
no,
order
of course not.
checking.
Well, but I was wondering like what this time like we ended up really far in the front. I was like, they're doing one of two things, right? One is they saw that we never did it, and so they gave up on us, right? And
they want you to feel what it's like.
But exactly.
The other one,
watch your next next.
The other one is they're training us to be like, oh look how good it feels to be able to pick your seat.
Yep.
So they can put us in the back of the bucket again, and but the fact that like not only could they just be doing this? They probably are fucking doing this.
Yeah. They have to be.
I just got
if you're selling something, service, product, whatever, then you are going to try to sell more of that.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get it.
That's just how selling things.
If you get full control of the environment, then this is exactly the thing.
And it's a black box. You can't see into.
Now you got this manipulation problem.
So Destiny 2 had this. Yeah. The players found out about it because players are not idiots, and they were rightfully pissed off that their gameplay experience was different from their friends' gameplay experiences in ways that were trying to manipulate them into spending more money on the game. So the hardcore Destiny players, sort of the bottom fell out of that. Like they just abandoned the game, and over time, the game has undergone a series of major patches and stuff to alleviate these problems, and by and large, it's back on track. The game is quite good, and so they launched this big expansion called Destiny 2 Forsaken, and essentially what they said was like those players aren't coming back; they're just not coming back.
Burn that bridge.
Yeah, and so they're like maybe they're waiting for Destiny 3, but the goodwill is gone, and So now they've been giving away Destiny 2 for free, trying to get in new players whose bridge they haven't burned, to get those people to buy then the expansion. Because like if they get into the game, they play the game for free for a while, then they buy the expansion pack or whatever. So a lot of kind of interesting like things not quite panning out as people would have hoped.
Yeah,
in the industry.
Well, this is part of a problem with the games as a service model. Right, which is that it hinges on this idea that you can continue delivering content and keep growing your player base. Except we know how finicky a player base is, and if most of your decisions going into the game design have to do with how to extract money from your players, you're walking an even tighter tightrope than you normally are. Right, of trying to get as much money out while not.
Yeah, I mean, just getting them to hang around for a long time is hard.
Well, period. Yeah, this reminds me of a conversation we had in the Discord over the break about esports. Because there's a problem with video games as a service, which is if you're continuously pumping content into the game, at a certain point, like a few things can happen. It's like one is you got kind of the League of Legends idea, which is you're adding more and more champions to the game all the time. Why? Because you need people to buy things, and people buy champions, and that's fine. You can also just keep pumping skins into the game and maybe some small services here and there. But all these things kind of point toward there never being a way to fully master the game in the long term, because the game continuously changes as necessitated by the fact that it needs to keep making money. If it stays stagnant, then at a certain point, people will not have anything left to buy, right? And on top of that, there's this idea that a video game is a product. Like you can't get away, like people can call it a service, but it's a product, and products have life cycles, right? So like restaurants as a concept, that's a service, right? Those don't have a life cycle. Like I'm probably going to be going to restaurants when I'm 90, just as I did when I was 9, right?
But would you go to the same one? Is it true that
Could be.
individual restaurants don't have life cycles?
I think probably an individual restaurant is a product.
I would imagine they probably have the same situation. Yeah.
Sure.
Because like they change up menus actually pretty regularly, right?
Yeah.
Because they want to keep you coming back to try new things. Right?
But like, so individual games will have a life cycle. But think about something like chess.
Yeah.
Right. So like that is like, is it in its decline stage? I don't think so. Like it's just kind of there,
just a game,
you know? And so, but the fact that it's static is what allows for that to be true.
Right.
Because you don't have like the developers of chess constantly trying to find ways to like make you pay 50 cents to move your queen or like add new pieces to the game to spice it up or whatever. And so because it's static, then that means people who played chess 40 years ago or 100 years ago or 500 years ago can operate by the same set of rules. And so it means something to like reach certain rankings, and sort of a culture can grow around that thing in the long term. And you can even stop playing chess for 10 years and come back and you still know how to play it, right? And so it has a very long-term sort of a slow burn to it. But for a lot of these games as a service things, they churn people out who get disengaged for even a short amount of time. It's like you probably experienced this with League of Legends.
Oh, yeah. You'd have some of these
You
big...
step out for a month and you come back and all of your knowledge is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think they have this kind of inherent problem with them, which is
It's interesting. Interesting conflict, basically.
Yeah, the conflict is that by constantly changing the game, you create an environment that people can't return to if they ever step away.
Well, it is the case, though, because a lot of that churn is what is exciting about, because unlike something like chess, which is static.
The churn makes it exciting to be a part of.
Yes.
But it also makes it so that it's only exciting for people who are a part of it. And as soon as you're not a part of it anymore, you basically
can't actually capitalize on your previous user base in a way like a game that is static could. Because all the players of chess could all be interested in a chess game now, right?
Yeah.
Because you played it before, you know what it is. It's the same. But if you went to League of Legends, for example, like I played it probably 4 years ago when I really, really was into it. And I just recently looked at some of their new champions and stuff, and just kind of I have no idea what's happening anymore. I have like almost no idea. And of course I know the basics, but when it comes to like who's a good matchup against who, like why certain things might matter, like they've changed the map, they've changed the jungle, they've changed routes, like all this stuff. So, this is where I'm really curious about things like trying to bring games. I don't know how we got on this, but anyway, like trying to bring games more into the mainstream, like this esports idea of trying to get more people engaged. And I think about the fact that like there's a lot of fans of like soccer and stuff like that who don't play soccer. Yeah. Right. And I don't really see that happening with video games, especially games that are constantly changing like this, where like you can't watch a League of Legends tournament. Yeah, I don't know.
Even though you put years of your life into playing that game and trying to master it, and you were actually competing at a high level.
Well, I think the problem there, though, is that they too closely emulated something like chess. It's a dynamic chess game versus something like Fortnite, which actually is, to me, very watchable because you're just shooting people and building stuff.
Yeah, you don't have to know. You don't have to know what the rules are for why people can build stuff and where and when. You just like see people building cool shit and using it as an interesting obstacle.
Yeah,
or whatever.
It's easy to see what's like Rocket League is also a great one that you can.
So
watch.
I think there's different types of games. I think that basically the further into tactical or strategy stuff you get, if you're also having a dynamic business model on top of that, then I think you're going to run into what is actually a big problem for esports generally, which is that if the game is constantly changing and is also complex, then
well,
you don't
to me,
have
this is
a growing user base that can watch and enjoy it over time.
Yeah, to me, this is the pull. Like, this is the sort of dichotomy of incentives that makes it very hard for a video game to exist in the long term as like a core part of the culture at large, because the player base demands the game to constantly be changing in order for them to stay engaged. For that to happen, it needs to undergo constant development. Development is expensive, which means the game has to constantly extract money from the players, which means there's, in the long term, the incentive is, and like in a product life cycle, you see this with MMOs and stuff like that. No matter how long they last, at a certain point, they hit a decline phase where the player base starts to dry up. And then all of the efforts of the company shift away from new features and stuff into value extraction. Right. Which is like try to continue making money from the few people who are sticking around. And then you just end up with these kind of like algorithms that are designed to, rig people's experience to try to take their money. Yeah. So this is all super weird. I also think this is why, for example, a game like Diablo 2, was able to live so long, was that you just bought it. And then now that is what it is. Yep. It's not a service. It's not like undergoing constant development or whatever. And so it can develop this really loyal following over time because the game is huge and deep and people can develop a ton of mastery.
Well, and they can spend 20 years with like the old Pokemon, right? Because like it had a Pokedex. You knew exactly how many creatures there were. You could learn what all of them were. And people memorized like everything about all the different Pokemon that were in the original and every subsequent one as well, because they didn't have to come back to it and be like, oh shit, 5 new Pokemon have been added since I played this last 6 months ago. And because this one got added, it changed the rules to the entire game.
Or Smash Bros.
Like,
when a Smash Bros game comes out, it has the characters that it has the rules that it has. It's not being constantly patched and updated with new Smash characters or whatever. And so that's what allows tournaments to, like tournament scenes and actually like consider esports scenes.
You need a level of static play, otherwise you can't build it on a constantly shifting ground, basically.
Yeah. So
that's it's sort of interestingly incompatible with games as a service.
Yeah, which is mainly what the industry is now.
Yeah,
even ours. I mean, Crashlands, we've still been working on. We just put out a Switch launch for
Well, it's weird because like we are continually developing the game, but we're not asking for any more money, which is of course a bad business move.
It is.
In terms of
but that's also assuming that had we asked for money, we would have gotten it, which I think is not necessarily true.
Right. So I don't know what that means. But anyways, also Pokemon Let's Go is absolutely crushing everything right now.
They outsold Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey.
Yeah,
which is pretty
obscene.
Pretty wild. Well, especially because it's a non-standard Pokemon game.
Yeah.
So
it's effectively a remake of Pokemon Red Blue or Pokemon Yellow,
but with different mechanics, which is the wild part.
Yeah, instead of battling wild Pokemon, you just throw balls at them and hit them with berries,
and everybody levels up all at once, all the time, and it's just
But there's no Pokemon battles anymore.
There are only with trainers.
Oh,
you don't fight wild ones; you just thump them with a ball.
You just catch them.
Yeah,
interesting.
And then when you catch them, based on like how rare they were, how effectively you caught them. So like if you catch them with the first throw, then you get like an XP boost. There's also like a weird like mini game where there's like a circle that's shrinking and the smaller you let the circle get, if you hit the middle of the circle with the Pokeball, then you get like a big boost.
It's like fishing in Torchlight.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we actually were talking a lot about this when we were talking about campaign stuff for Levelhead too, right? We're trying to figure out like, what is it that people want to do there? And we're thinking about Pokemon. Like, what's fun about Pokemon? We're like, well, it's the battles. And we thought about it more. We're like, well, actually, the battles aren't very fun. It's the sort of the collection aspect, and then like the sort of exploration of the world coupled with
run around.
Right? And now they're saying, actually, okay, no, the battle doesn't matter either.
The battle does matter, but it should be.
But it could be anything,
as opposed to
because in the case of Pokemon, this new Pokemon, right? Like that means that most of the things that you're doing are not battling other trainers.
Correct, but that actually makes the battling more interesting because now when you go to fight a trainer, one, it's rarer, and two, it can actually be hard.
Yeah,
right.
Well, and also there was that.
No, it's not.
There was that.
No, it's not.
There was that negative aspect of walking through the tall grass.
Yeah.
When you're on your way somewhere in the story and like things keep attacking you and your Pokemon are slowly dying. Like you're running out of moves, you're getting killed, whatever, and you can't really level up your Pokemon without also risking them, right? And also sort of hampering your progress through the story. So especially like when you're in a Zubat cave, which is the worst, and everything that you fight is a fucking Zubat. and you take 3 steps and it's Zubat, 3 more steps and it's Zubat.
Yep.
But there's also like hikers and random other people in there. And so what you end up doing is mostly running away from the Zubats every time they attack you, so that you have enough HP and moves left to fight the trainers, right? So now they actually have little Pokemon pop out in the grass.
See them with your
and
eyes.
they start walking around.
Oh, you can just go run into them.
You can see them, and if you want to try to catch them, then you bump into them.
I wonder if
On
because we've been
purpose.
talking a lot about this. I wonder if this is because obviously the game's selling great, right? And people are going to have a good time with it regardless. But I wonder if the experience is actually going to be less good because these, quote unquote problems, right, have been removed. Because like you just said, a fucking Zubat cave. When you talk about the experience, like we've all shared that experience. I know exactly what you're talking about. This is now a thing that brings us into shared history that we remember specifically. I don't remember anything about the game otherwise, except for these like mostly painful experiences.
Right.
And everything else is just like this general high level of like, oh, that was a pretty good time.
Well, I think the note here is that it's not that it's better. It's just a different animal.
Yeah, it's gonna be different, definitely.
it's just a different
but I wonder
The
if
question is
it's gonna take.
how sticky is it?
Yeah, it's going to take away some of the sense of like of depth and sort of memorable. Because like I'm thinking like there's nothing really memorable about just like hitting it. Like I have no recollection at all of capturing any Pokemon. Like when I threw the Pokeball,
Do you remember the ones that were hard to get, like Abra?
You mean like to get into a Pokeball?
Yeah.
But mostly because he had to
just teleports
Yep.
away. with
mostly because he had to
spoons.
fight him so much first.
Yeah, either had to fight them or they just ran away immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so-
remember because Seth and I played Sapphire and Ruby back in high school, and we were going to complete a Pokédex, and we were close to it. And then the 2 like final legendary ones, they show up, and then they just like are appearing randomly around the map. So you just have to run around the grass constantly. But then the worst part about it is that when you find them, they just leave, and they're also like level 70, and like you can't.
You got to figure out like maybe try to paralyze it first.
I think it
or
took us.
something.
It took us like 4 hours to get one to show up in a battle, and then it just left. And I think that was actually we were like, well, I guess we're done. Like, fuck this.
Yeah, we're close enough.
Close enough. 148's fine.
But also, had we gone through with it, that would have been pretty
been awesome. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And this is
16
kind of the feeling that I got was I do admit like I enjoyed it, but I also didn't really feel anything.
Because you played the new Pokemon.
I played.
Yeah, because that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about it's going to feel like it doesn't have any soul.
Yeah, well, there's another interesting thing, which is like in the old games, you could just like take your starter Pokemon and just use it. Like, this is mine now, and I don't give a fuck about catching anything else.
Yep.
I'm just going to go into tall grass, battle, grind it out, level up, and then just one-shot everybody. And that's a decision that you can make. In the current one, they actually don't – they take away a lot of those decisions. So, for example, when you go to a gym, they won't let you fight the trainer until you've reached a certain level.
Oh.
They won't let you fight the trainer unless you have a type of Pokemon that counters their type.
So they actually take away all of your agency.
Well, it's
They take
supposed-
away your agency.
Yeah,
so
but it is supposed to be – it's not for hardcore people.
but that's an interesting question, though, because neither was the first one.
neither were any of the Pokemon.
Right. So now apparently
the Pokemons were never for hardcore.
Right. So now apparently hardcore means you can lose. That's what it means. Right. And that's no longer the case. At no point in I'm now like 3 hours or 4 hours in. I've got several gym badges. I've got like 30 Pokemon in my Pokedex or whatever. And at no point have I felt like I was even able to find something in the game that put any of my Pokemon at risk. Even gym battles, which are supposed to be like the big boss fights, you know.
This is actually the main reason I stopped playing the last Pokemon game was because after a while I just got bored because it just wasn't.
You don't have. Well, yeah. Anything you do, you win.
Yeah, it just didn't feel like my decisions ever mattered. You know? It was like it felt like the collection aspect was fun, like, but after that it just didn't seem like anything.
Maybe I'll play it on Nuzlocke mode. You know.
What's
What
that?
is that? I've never
That
heard of
fan made
this.
hardcore mode where if your Pokemon ever passes out, then you have to set it free. And then you can only play with the one
Well,
that
that's
you
the
can
problem
fill up
is
with.
like
set Pokemon
you're
free?
never gonna have a Pokemon pass out.
Well, the other one is that any Pokemon you catch that fills up your party is the Pokemon you have now. So the only way to have a Pokemon go is if it dies, essentially, then you set it free. And then otherwise, the very next Pokemon you catch, which this game's all about catching, is the one that goes in your party.
Yeah, but the problem is actually the way that you level up is by catching, and also the in the older games when you caught a Pokemon, you caught it on purpose, you sought it out on purpose, you named it, and that was the one that you had. Like you caught your Weedle,
Yeah,
and
you
you're
wouldn't
like,
catch multiple Weedles.
yeah, you're like, this is my Weedle now,
Mhm.
right? What happens if you've got 30 Weedles? Because they also have this thing called a combo, which is
Oh, yeah.
they have these special versions of all the Pokemon, which are like differently colored, and I think they maybe have better stats or something. The way you get them to show up is by repeatedly catching the same one in a row to build up a combo multiplier, which boosts your XP. But then also once you reach certain combos, then the special ones show up. So you essentially have this mini game where like if you want like a special Rattata or whatever, then you need to just continuously catch Rattatas and nothing else, and like keep avoiding any other Pokemon you see. And then you just end up with like 30 Rattatas. And you're
interesting.
And then you go like,
though, it's just like it's a very different game.
Well, but then what you do is like then you package up your Pokemons, the ones you don't want, and you mail them to Professor Oak, and he sends you back candy that you feed to your current one to boost its stats, right? So Pokemon essentially go from being like these companions that have interesting stories to being this like commodity that you're just like hoarding and trading.
Weird.
They're like a currency now.
But maybe
that's
weird. Maybe that's just more true to what the Pokemon world would actually be. I mean, like if you could just thump things with a ball to have them now.
Yeah.
That would be totally a commodity-based market. Like everything would just
I assume you need a lot of Pokeballs in this game.
Yeah.
Do you have infinite ones, or do you?
Well, now when you beat trainers in battle, they give you money and they give you Pokeballs. So you end up with just like an
Pokeballs
infinite...
actually always felt like a rare, kind of expensive.
Yeah, well, because
item.
you were supposed to use them in special moments.
Yeah,
and now that's like your ammo. You know, it's like just a thing that you use.
I think it's overall going to be really good though for the series. The question is,
well, the problem is that I think it's one of those regressions that's hard to undo. Right, because now what happens in the next game? Like, let's say you bring in a bunch of new people who are now they're like, oh yeah, this is a game where you just like, you know, drool and just hit A, and then you win the game after 20 hours or something. So what's going to happen?
Give them a tiny bit of a challenge.
Yeah, what's going to happen if the next Pokemon game reverts back to the original concept where now you're just battling the whole time? I don't think people will respond.
I don't know. I think it'll be fine. I think they're just ramping people. I think the genie's out. I think this is the slippery slope of convenience that you cannot walk back up it because it's too fucking slippery. I don't think. I think probably what they're doing is on a game by game basis, they're forming a difficulty curve, just like you would if you're playing through a level of a game. So if you think about Pokemon Let's Go, like the challenge is literally physically moving your damn body around. That's it. And then if you think about Let's Go Pokemon or Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, it's sort of the next iteration of that. And if you think about the traditional games, it's the very next iteration of that. So what I'm saying is like they're basically creating a curve through which people of any different level who want to participate can participate. I don't necessarily think that
we'll see. In my experience, games only get easier over time.
That's generally true. Yeah.
So because that's what people demand, and then they get bored and leave. So I'm curious to see what the response would be if they made like the next Pokemon game saying like, now that we've gotten you into the universe, now all that stuff that you liked about Pokemon Let's Go, that's gone now. All that catching stuff.
My guess is they'll just roll it into like the Safari Zone or something. You know, like it'll be there. They'll just sort of sideline it and put it in a box.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
I think it's like the Safari Zone makes no sense at all, but in the that exact mechanic you're talking about, perfect for something like Safari Zone.
That's true.
It would be awesome to go and like change it up a little bit and just like thump Rhyhorns with balls, right?
But people would have to get there first.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be good. We'll figure it out.
We'll see.
I think they're gonna. I think it's smart.
All right, so we're pretty much out of time, but I do want to answer one question because we actually haven't answered any questions. So let's just do it. cdcMully says, "Hey, B bros, question for you. In the game dev process, by far my weakest point is the art. I've kind of been sticking to simpler art styles, but would eventually like to make a fun RPG with many weapons, armor, and characters. Finding an artist would be ideal, but it's just not viable at the moment, as this is just a hobby for me that I hope to maybe make some spare change on. Should I just keep practicing art until I get to that point, or are there any suggestions or tips?"
The two tips that I have are one, yes, keep practicing so that you're self-sufficient enough.
Well, I think, yeah, if it's not viable to have a person,
that's your only move.
Your options are keep practicing or don't practice.
Yeah, and then the other one is to try to embrace the constraints in some way.
Yeah,
because a lot of clever stuff
live
comes
in those
out of
constraints.
Yeah, it comes out of recognizing, okay, I can't actually perform X, Y, or Z at a high enough level to make it work.
Yeah, I can't make
I get
humans,
around it?
so let me make Thomas Was Alone, which is only rectangles.
Exactly. Yes. Well, because I think there's something to be said about, all right, maybe you can't render realistic objects with your hands, with your art, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't make things that look good,
Yes.
Because things that look good are oftentimes about shape and color.
Mhm.
So if you don't have the sense to, for example, like if your main menu is like a maximum blue background with maximum red text on it, then start there because you fucked that up real good. Don't do hot pink on lime green. You know, there are some things that for some reason people always do, and they're the worst.
Yep.
So study. Go to the basics. Study color theory. Stick to like more basic shapes and stuff, because there's that problem where like if you are bad at art and then you decide that that's going to be something that you put into your game, you're just putting bad stuff into your game.
Yeah.
So don't.
Yeah, and I think that,
bad is not a design choice.
yeah,
Yeah.
the most
That's
important
just a
thing,
gross thing you did.
Yeah.
the most important thing to remember is that style by definition is actually just the choice about what you're taking away from reality. So if you're starting in a place where actually you can't put much in, you guess what? You already got a style going on. It's accidental, of course, because it's based on your constraints. But most people's style is based on either their own personal limitations or something that they've grown to just be using as a shortcut. So in our case, we use black lines for everything, and it's because I find it way easier to draw things when I have black outlines on them.
Yeah.
There doesn't really get much better than that in terms of like a stylistic choice. But I figured out over time how to make it look good. If you look at some of our previous stuff, it doesn't look good. And even though it's using the exact same mechanisms, even the exact same shapes or colors, it doesn't quite do it. And so it's just about recognizing what those constraints are that you're embracing, whether it's, okay, in this case, we're not doing any black outlines. We're not doing like depth of much sort. We're just going to do basic colors and basic shapes. You can make really beautiful stuff out of that. So it's just about developing an eye and then starting at that foundational level and going from there, I think.
Well, and also let your, because you can make the game however you're saying I want to make an RPG, which doesn't mean anything really.
Correct.
It means it potentially has some kind of power progression system.
But the problem here is that probably you're thinking this means that I've got to have swords, I've got to have goblins, I've got to have like all the classic RPG elements. When you could let the restrictions on your art inform what this thing actually is. So while it might be rooted in RPG mechanics, it doesn't. You don't have to have any swords in there at all, right? You don't have to have any of that kind of stuff. And if you do, it can be very abstracted. You could even make a game called like Triangle Quest. Yeah,
and like you're a triangle, and like the triangle tribe is being oppressed by the circle people,
or whatever.
And of course, like all of the spells or the abilities that your character has, you're just like shooting shapes out, like you're just shooting triangles at rectangles.
Yeah, so there's a lot you can do there. And in fact, I think by embracing the constraints and letting that permeate, not just like, oh, my art is this way,
right?
But because my art has to be this way, or I want it to be this way, let me have that inform the design of my game.
Can you thematically join it with the mechanics?
Yeah.
Because that's actually how you make original stuff that nobody else has made.
Yeah, I would look at Thomas Was Alone, great example. But also note that the design of that game is great. UI design, the way that they convey the narrative, the way that they convey like just the cleanness of the font and how minimalistic things are.
Well, the reality is the uglier your game, the more or the less visually developed your game, the more it has to rest on the design. Yeah, that's just how you have a balance.
It can't just be bad at all.
Yeah, right. You have to compensate. Well, it's kind of what we were talking about with Donkey Kong. Like again, I think from a visual standpoint and overall sort of vibe standpoint, I don't think I've seen anything as good as that. From a platforming standpoint, it's not very good. Honestly, like, I'm not super into it, but I stuck around for like 4.5 hours
because you just like looking at it.
Because
I felt the same about Trine.
Yeah,
which is like it's fine in terms of its gameplay. It has some cool, interesting mechanics, but
it's so gorgeous.
It's not very long, and the puzzles are actually not that hard. But it's beautiful. I felt like every shot in the game, I felt like I could have just taken a screenshot, framed it, put it on my wall. And that's actually why I bought it. I was like, I don't even care how well this plays. I just want to look at it more. So you got to know where your strengths are. Play to those. Figure out how to compensate for your weaknesses.
Yeah, just don't get caught in the trap where you're like, oh, I'm gonna just do my best to make a sword. Like don't get caught in that trap.
It only worked for Minecraft. That was it. Yeah. You're not.
It's one and done.
That was an outlier.
The universe got its Minecraft out. That's done now. Nobody else gets to do that again. So. All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have. We'd like to thank our producer, Fat Bard, for making us sound good. Thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. If you'd like to get more involved in the Butterscotch community, you can hop into our Discord server, which you can find at discord.gg/bscotch. Also, if you'd like to adorn your body with Butterscotch merch like t-shirts, stickers, mugs, pants. We don't have pants. We're working on pants. Are we working on pants?
We have pants. Like
we have pants.
That we'll wear.
Some of you have pants.
Also, if you'd like to send us something, you can send us pants or whatever by heading over to mailbox.bscotch.net.
Although I don't want any pants, so please don't.
I could use some pants. If you just if pants show up,
do you want to list your sizes then, so that people know?
I want people to guess.
Okay.
If you go stretchy, then you're more likely to get an accurate
leggings. We're gonna get a bunch of leggings.
I'm more of a jeggings kind of a guy, but I'll take whatever. Free pants.
Is jeggings leggings for jogging?
I think it's leggings that look like they're jeans.
Oh, okay, that works too.
They have like a jeans pattern on them. Also, last but not least, if you would like to buy us a cup of coffee, you can support the podcast over at moneygrab.bscotch.net. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.